Britain's Conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03. It's the time for the first of our Battle for Prime Minister interviews over the course of the next 2 weeks or so. I'll be interviewing hopefully all of the leadership candidates. Up first is Mark Harper. We're going to meet him in just a second. On Monday, it's the turn of Rory Stewart and Sam Gmar. Now, of course, nominations close at 5:30 on Monday, so we hope that they both get the requisite numbers. Otherwise, we'll have an empty programme on Monday evening, I suspect. Mark Harper, welcome.
Thank you, Ian.
You are Conservative MP for the Forest of Dean, a former government chief whip. But to many of our listeners, they might not know an awful lot about you. Who are you?
Okay, well, that's certainly true. And I mean, part of the reason for that is I have had a number of government jobs. I've been in Parliament since 2005, but they were more junior jobs, and my most senior job as Chief Whip is the kind of job where, and I've said this before, if you're doing it properly, people shouldn't know who you are, and they only generally know who you are if you cock it up in some way. So I'll take the fact that I didn't become terribly famous in that job as a good thing. I come from working class family. Mum and Dad were both working class. First person in my family to go to university. Went to a state school. Got good advice to go and get a proper professional qualification. So I trained as an accountant, worked in business in the IT industry for a number of years, and I got selected for the Forest of Dean 20 years ago. It was a seat we'd lost in 1997, and I won it back. I had a 6,500 Labour majority. It's now got a nearly 10,000 Conservative majority. It's a lot of hard work, and it means I think you approach politics in a different way than if you get selected for a seat that already started off with a 10,000 Conservative majority. You know, I live in the constituency. I go there every week. That's where I live. London's the place I come because it's where Parliament is rather than the other way around. I'm very, very lucky because I represent one of the most fantastic parts of the country. Fantastic people. They've responded quite well to the fact that I'm running to be leader of my party and Prime Minister. Fantastic vox pop the other week. There was a nice lady, I think she was an older lady, who said that she thought I was quite good looking in my own way. And I don't quite know what that meant.
Frankly,
but it was quite funny.
I'd settle for that if I were you. Let me just remind everyone, if you want to watch us, you can do so on the LBC Twitter feed at LBC, our Facebook page, and on our website at lbc.co.uk. And all of these interviews over the course of the next 2 weeks, they'll all be on our YouTube channel. So if you miss tonight's one, you'll also be able to listen back on the podcast as well. We'll also be putting them all on the Cross Question podcast. You've described yourself as the underdog, yep, which shows that you have at least some self-knowledge, which maybe one or two of your colleagues could have. But of course, two of your colleagues dropped out of the contest, yep, James Cleverly and Kit Malthouse. You haven't. Why?
Well, look, I'm doing this because I'm in it to win it, to quote a phrase. I'm not doing this to get a job. And I know that this is going to be tough because I haven't been in the cabinet for the last few years. I happen to think that's one of the arguments I'm making. I've looked at the contenders, and I don't think any of them are right to lead my party or lead my country. If I thought, frankly, one of the other candidates was better, I'd have called them up some time ago and offered to help them win. And I think I've got something to offer. Part of it is having experience in Parliament, doing difficult ministerial briefs, getting difficult stuff through, including stuff that wasn't always the flavour of my colleagues. In the coalition government, when I did a lot of constitutional legislation, lots of my Conservative colleagues didn't like it, and I had experience of working with them and understanding how you persuade people to support things they don't like. And as Chief Whip, I think I learnt something both about how to handle Parliament, but also about some of what's involved in looking at the overall government position. And I think I've got some of the skills required to deliver Brexit, govern in a Conservative way for the next 3 years, and my experience of fighting my own seat is I think I can take on Jeremy Corbyn and I can beat him.
But when you say that you've looked at the other contenders and you think that you would do a better job than them, some people will say that's delusional. Some people will say that's being very arrogant. I mean, it displays a certain self-confidence, but I mean, you haven't been in the government for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. There's presumably a reason for that.
Well, the ostensible reason is because the Prime Minister decided not to ask me to join her cabinet. I'm comforted by the fact.
Why do you think that was?
Well, the honest answer, I'll be brutally honest, I don't know. Many of my colleagues have said to me at various points over the last 3 years they are astounded that I am not in the government, and they think that I Many of my colleagues think I would bring something to the cabinet table, which is part of the reason why I think I've been willing to put myself forward to take the top job. The honest answer is I don't know. You'd have to ask her.
Because it is odd, because she has a record of standing by all of her former Home Office ministers. Karen Bradley's in the government, Brandon Lewis, James Brokenshire, several others. You must have done something to offend her in some way.
Well, maybe I have.
Or maybe she thought you were just not very good at your job as immigration minister. I mean, it can only be one of those two things, can't it?
The honest answer is I don't know. The former Prime Minister David Cameron thought I was very good at all of those jobs, and gave me a number of them. And I think my record, both on Home Affairs matters and others, was pretty good. Nobody else seems to think. Nobody else can work out why I'm not in the government.
Was it because she offered you a Minister of State job rather than a cabinet job, and you decided not to take that?
Well, look, I'm not going to go through what the Prime Minister did or didn't say to me. I have said previously I turned down being in the government, but she, for her own reason, decided she wanted me in the cabinet. But that's a matter for her.
But again, doesn't that display a bit of arrogance to think, well, I should have automatically been in the cabinet, and the Minister of State job wasn't good enough for me?
No, I've been very loyal to the government up until the up until the vote on the deal that she brought back to Parliament, the Cabinet's deal on Europe. I had loyally supported the government from the backbenches, so I was very clear. I'm not one of those people that goes off and is disloyal. I supported the government from the backbenches, and when I didn't vote for the withdrawal agreement the first two times, that was the first time in my 14 years in Parliament that I hadn't supported my party, and I thought very carefully about it. But otherwise, I've been a big cheerleader for the government from the backbenches.
Anybody who aspires to the office of Prime Minister is going to have to come forward with solutions to the country's problems. We'll come on to Brexit in a moment. But I want to look at one or two other things. You launched your website today, and it's a very clean-looking website. But when I look through it to find a bit of detail, there's a little bit of detail lacking. When you say, with fresh ideas for the future, we can move Britain forward, then you say investing in every child, encouraging enterprise, competition and choice, ensuring that work always pays, fixing our NHS and social care, taking action on climate change, fighting Britain's corner on the world stage. That's just motherhood and apple pie. Nobody, a Labour politician would agree with all of those, let alone a Conservative one. Where's the fresh thinking there?
Well, for a start, it's a good thing that you don't disagree with any of them. But I mean, look, let me give you some detail. Social care, for example. Half the budget on social care is spent on older people, half on working age disabled people. I think we should have gripped this a long time ago. It was a big issue in the general election campaign, as you remember. It's one of the things that we didn't land very well. I think there is a solution waiting to be delivered. There have been loads of inquiries and work on this. Andrew Dilnot led a commission, recommended a solution to cap how much money people had to put into social care from their homes. We chose not to do it because we thought it was too expensive. We've had to put billions of pounds into the social care system. We could deliver that quite quickly in this Parliament, and I think we should get on and do it. We've been promising a social care green paper for the last 2 years, and we haven't published it even though it's ready to go. I don't think we need more talking. We need to start delivering some of this stuff, as well as delivering Brexit.
But what's your radical idea? Because if you are, you say that you're the underdog. Underdogs have to say controversial things, A, to get noticed, and B, to court popularity. Now, Dominic Raab has issued a 40-point plan, which I'll be going through with him. What are the three pitches that you're sending to your colleagues here? Things that really mark you out from the other contenders.
Okay, well, look, the first one, which is very personal to me, is about opportunity. So I don't think it's sensible for leadership candidates for the Conservative Party to start making specific tax and spending pledges.
Why on earth not?
Well, because we have a process to do that. We've just spent 9 years getting some credibility about getting the public finances in shape. We're just about to have a comprehensive spending review where we have to balance tax cuts, spending pressures across government. And I think you have to do that in a sensible way. When we're going to fight the general election, the Labour Party is going to be spraying money around. Our argument is going to be that you have to earn money, you have to tax people carefully because it's their money, and you have to make choices about where you spend it. I don't think you're going to be able to make those arguments successfully if we haven't conducted ourselves in that way in a leadership contest. And
but how is that a pitch for votes? Because you've just articulated something that virtually every Conservative in the country would agree with.
What I do think you can do is you can set out direction of travel. So, for example, opportunity, education. I think, based on my own experience and that listening to colleagues, we need to put more money into schools, particularly in primary schools, so that you give children a good start early on. And then when it comes to post-16 education, we've just seen the government publish the Auger Review, which I think has got a fundamental mistake in it. It's talking about putting a lot more taxpayers' money into our universities. I think that's a mistake. I think the university sector is the relatively best off bit of the education sector.
So you wouldn't want to cut tuition fees?
No, I wouldn't. Okay. I think the thing that we have to make an argument about, which is different from when I went to university, is yes, people have to pay tuition fees and get loans to do so, although I think they're more accurately called a graduate contribution, which is what Martin Lewis has argued. But the thing that buys you is that a lot more young people get the opportunity to go to university.
So
where I would
you bring back maintenance grants?
Well, let me just finish that thought. Where I would put the money is into further education and apprenticeships, because I want to make sure that the Conservative Party is offering a really good offer for the half of young people that don't go to university, not just the half that do. And I think that would be a really attractive offer. I think it would put Labour on the back foot, given that they're proposing to spend a huge amount of money on universities.
And just on apprentices, would you abolish the apprenticeship levy?
Well, I think the apprenticeship levy is not working well. I think there's a good reason for it, which is to force companies to put money into training. I've had lots of feedback from companies that it's not having the desired effect. So I think we need to look at it and work out whether we can make sure you get the investment through the supply chain, you get the flexibility to enable companies to ensure their supply chain companies invest in business. So I wouldn't say I'm going to scrap it, but I do think there's a lot of feedback to say it's not working the way it's intended.
Grants?
On maintenance grants, my own personal experience tells me that I'm not sure bringing back maintenance grants is the right answer, because maintenance grants are means tested based on your parents' income, and it puts an obligation on your parents to fund you through university, whereas allowing you to borrow the money for the maintenance loan means it's based on what you're going to earn in the future.
But aren't you pulling up the ladder behind you? Because you said at the beginning that you came from a working class background, you went to university a few years after me, but you wouldn't have had the same level of financial commitment that 18, 20-year-olds have nowadays.
No, I got a very small maintenance grant, even though my parents were on a very low income, and I paid my way through university. I worked all of my holidays.
Which in those days was actually quite unusual.
Yes, and I a lot of my university contemporaries who were better off, could do other things in the holidays, and I worked my way through university, and I suppose that's kind of what's been ingrained in me. But I'm conscious that there are many people from backgrounds perhaps where their parents are less supportive of going to university. What I wouldn't want to do was have a maintenance grant system that was means tested, that assumed your parents would make a contribution, but they didn't, that cut off the opportunities. So I think we've got to look here and make sure we don't artificially cut off opportunities for young people.
Going back to school funding, you said you want to put more money into schools. Boris Johnson, I think, said this week that he thinks there should be at least £5,000 spent per pupil. What would your figure be?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should pluck a figure out of the air for this reason. I'm very conscious we've just introduced a new funding formula to have fair funding across the country. And that's great for areas like mine, which have been traditionally low funded. The problem is, because we're not going to take funding away from better off areas, which I completely understand, it's going to take some time to level the playing field. So the problem with picking a figure like that is that's a modest increase for an area like mine. There are parts of the country that are getting almost double that. And I just think we have to grow the amount.
But if you're saying there should be more money put in, you must have an idea of how much.
Well, I think we need to increase it. The reason why I'm being cagey is because I'm also very conscious there are lots of pressures across public spending, in education, in social care, for policing, in local government. And I think you need to look at that in the round. You need to look at the economic growth forecasts. You need to look at your tax revenues. You need to look at, are you going to deliver tax cuts? You have to balance these things off and make choices. And I don't think doing them in isolation.
We want to know what your choices are. If you want to be our Prime Minister, we want to know how much you want to cut out. You might not be able to say, well, I can't deliver this immediately, but over the next 5 years, like Dominic Raab has said, I want to cut income tax 1 pence per year. Now, that's something that he's committed to.
Yes. What I want to do is I want to make sure people on modest incomes are better off. And one problem with making an income tax cut is you only benefit people who pay income tax. And people at the lower end of the wage spectrum don't pay any income tax. So you've got to look at increases in the national living wage. You've got to look at how universal credit works and the working allowance and the taper relief and income tax. You've got to look at all of those things together. And I think dreaming those up in the middle of a leadership election for the next 5 years isn't a very sensible way to govern the country.
You haven't so far given, apart from saying you think tuition fees should stay at the same level as they are now, beyond some sort of rather banal comments about lower taxes and all the rest of it, and you want to spend more money on education, you haven't given me a single meaningful campaign promise that people can think, that's why I'm going to vote for Mark Harper.
Well, I did give you one on social care. I think we should get on, and for social care for older people, I think we should take the proposals that Iain Dale put forward, where you cap the amount of money that someone has to contribute from their own resources to social care, and I think we should get on and deliver it. We shouldn't just talk.
But there's someone else's proposals. What about what unique ideas can you bring to this leadership contest?
That was a proposal. We asked the Conservative Party, the Conservative government asked Iain Dale to head up a commission to come back with some sensible recommendations.
This was like 10 years ago.
Yes. But we haven't done it. So what I'm about is getting on and getting things done. And what did you,
when you were in government, what did you do? You were chief whip. What did you do to promote that being done?
Well, I argued for it, but it didn't get through. I was one voice around the table. The advantage if you're Prime Minister is you're still one voice around the table, but you're just a much louder voice.
First among equals.
And you can get some things done. Well, you're first among equals, but it's the first bit, and you can get stuff done.
Right, we need to go to a break, and then we will continue. And we'll also take your calls in a few moments' time. 0345 6060 973. Don't forget you can watch us on our Twitter feed, Facebook page, and our website at lbc.co.uk. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
How refreshing is it to know that when you're thinking about remortgaging, you can find out if you could borrow what you need straight away without affecting your credit score? That's why at Barclays, we'll let you know with an online agreement in principle from the comfort of your own home. We're refreshing and reshaping the way we do mortgages to make them easier. Search Barclays Mortgages. Let's go forward. T's and C's apply.
I don't expect to need legal advice anytime soon, but there's been several times when having a legal opinion on hand would have really helped. Because the families growing up, there's more chance they'll need it too.
A Legal Defence membership means affordable advice 24/7 is only a phone call away. Legal Defence saves you 25% across all consumer and criminal law matters, from will preparation to buying or selling a house. To find out more, visit legaldefence.co.uk. Savings against standard Slater and Gordon fees.
Out of bed and... Slippers on, breakfast cooked, lunch packed.
Darling, where are my
Keys are on the side. Get dressed, shirt on, the right way, leave the house, pop to Costa, order a coffee and... relax with a deliciously smooth cappuccino.
Escape the morning rush with your favourite coffee. Visit your local Costa Coffee today.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Psst! Did you know that Pimlico Plumbers have an utterly fabulous 24-hour service for plumbing, heating, drains, roofing, electrics, appliances, carpentry and building? Whatever your predicament, Pimlico Plumbers can send a friendly face to your door within the hour. Shh! And just between us, their work even comes with a 12-month guarantee. They aren't just any old tradesmen, they're Pimlico Plumbers, and they're always available on 0207 928 8888 or at pimlicoplumbers.com.
You can complain free to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman about missold PPI. Alternatively, if you haven't got the time or the inclination, then just get the claims guys to manage the claims process for you. With the August 29th deadline approaching, time's at a premium anyway. So if you can't find your paperwork or you're not even sure you have PPI, it's definitely time to make a decision and start your PPI claim before it's too late. Text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys. Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
It's 22 minutes past 8 here on LBC. We're with Mark Harper. He's Conservative MP for Forest of Dean, former government chief whip, and standing for the leadership of the Conservative Party and potentially to be our next Prime Minister. Mark, HS2, scrap or keep?
Keep.
Well, that's a categorical answer, which we've had. One or two other candidates have been slightly mealy-mouthed over that one. Now, why do you think that it should be kept? It's costing a huge amount of money, which could be spent on other things.
It is, but I think it's important for two reasons. First, actually, it's less about the speed, it's more about the capacity. If you weren't doing HS2, you'd actually have to spend a huge amount of money on the West Coast Main Line and actually disrupt all of that traffic. I think one of the things that's really important is that we distribute growth more evenly across the UK. And it's not about, London is grown hugely and pays its own way in terms of tax compared to public spending, but I think we need to make sure we join up the rest of the country. And I was very conscious when Ed Miliband talked about scrapping HS2, the response from the Labour mayors in Manchester, Liverpool and so forth was pretty unequivocal. They used words that I can't use on a radio programme. And I'm very conscious when we've had the party conference in Manchester and Birmingham, we look at what HS2 is driving in terms of investment and development in Birmingham and Manchester. I think it's about just making the entire country more economically vibrant. I think we probably need more infrastructure and transport investment. And if we need to do more, it's not about not doing HS2, it's about looking at Transport for the North's plans and delivering more transport to join up the rest of the North. I think the Northern Powerhouse concept that George Osborne developed, I think was the right one, and I think we should stick with it.
The next Prime Minister needs to be a Brexiteer, surely.
I think the next Prime Minister needs to be someone who delivers Brexit. I don't think that necessarily means, I'll be quite frank, I voted Remain, but if you look at my voting record in Parliament since, I have voted on each occasion to try and deliver Brexit. I voted on the third occasion for the Prime Minister's deal because I thought if we didn't get it over the line we wouldn't have left, which is correct, and I voted to leave on the 29th of March and the 12th of April without a deal. And I voted against extending Article 50 because I thought we need to deliver Brexit. I think Britain made a choice. We had two futures in front of us. I think we asked the country to make a decision. Voters stepped up, made a decision, and I think politicians need to get on and deliver it.
But
and I've got a credible plan to deliver it.
Isn't it more likely to be delivered by someone who actually believes in it?
Well, I do believe in it.
But you voted Remain, so clearly, Theresa May says she believed in it, and we all know what happened there.
The country made a decision. We had two different futures in front of us. The country made a decision. I voted on balance Remain. I wasn't kind of miles over on one side or miles over on the other. But I'm a Democrat. I was part of the cabinet that offered the country the choice, and I've got.
Do you regret offering that choice now?
No, I don't, because I think interestingly, given the way the referendum result went, it's fairly clear that we offered the country a choice it wanted to make. And I think we need to get on and deliver leaving so that we can then take advantage of the opportunities of Brexit and also enable the government to then develop the future relationship with the European Union and do all of the other things that the public expect us to do. It is true at the moment that not having delivered Brexit is causing the government not to be able to focus on anything else.
But why do you think you could do that, whereas Theresa May couldn't?
Well, my own view is I think there are some skills that I think I have shown in the jobs that I've done before that I think would be able to get the job done. One of the important tasks is to sit down with my Conservative colleagues and effectively have the Prime Minister lead from the front. Part of the work that my Conservative colleague Kit Morthouse did is get some of our colleagues who have different views on Brexit in the same room and effectively reach an agreed...
They've been in the cabinet doing this for the last 3 years.
Yes, but they haven't. At no point, as far as I can tell, has the cabinet really had a frank discussion and agreed on a position, which is why cabinet discipline has broken down. We read practically verbatim transcripts of cabinet meetings, and I just don't think you can run a government like that. I think you need to.
So what would you do? You say one of your cabinet ministers, you find out that this cabinet minister has been briefing, seems to be Stephen Swinford of the Telegraph, seems to be the recipient of a lot of these things. You find out for definite that one of your cabinet ministers has done that. What do you do?
Well, I think, look, if you're running the cabinet properly, which I think there's a quid pro quo, the Prime Minister needs to run the cabinet and have proper cabinet meetings where ministers are allowed to engage in a frank exchange of views. That's got to happen. But once the Prime Minister has then summed up the decision of the Cabinet. I think if you get Cabinet Ministers briefing out transcripts of the meeting, then I'm afraid they stop being a Cabinet Minister.
So you would sack somebody for leaking?
Yes, I would, because I think...
On the first transgression?
Well, you have to make a judgment about it. I mean, if someone does it once and you catch them and they never do it again, but if you've got somebody who's leaking like a sieve, it's corroding of the ability of Cabinet to have frank discussions. Because
do you think Gavin Williamson was treated badly?
Well, the honest answer is I don't know the facts of the case. If a Cabinet Minister leaked the contents of a National Security Council meeting, then it is right that they're no longer in the Cabinet, because the reason why that is particularly important is that those meetings are attended by senior members from the security services, and they have to protect the people that they have in the field. And if they can't be frank in those meetings, potentially lives are put at risk, or they're not frank and the Cabinet makes poor decisions. But okay. I simply don't know the truth. The Prime Minister clearly took the view that he had disclosed that information. I don't know the truth. Right. If he did, then it's right that he
Let's
won't.
just go back to Brexit and particularly whether you are somebody who would rule out no deal. If you don't rule out no deal, how could you get that through Parliament?
No, I don't rule it out, but I think that you can only put it has to be on the table if you're going to persuade the European Union to negotiate properly. But I think the only way you can have it on the table is if Conservative colleagues think that you have absolutely tried your best to get a deal. If Conservative colleagues, there are a number of my colleagues, about 15 or so of them, that voted against the government when push came to shove on the so-called Cooper-Letwin-Bowles bill. If they don't think we've done this properly, they're not going to support the government, and you're not going to get no deal through. It's very clear the Speaker and a combination of a majority against you will enable Parliament to prevent us leaving without a deal. The only way we're going to deliver leaving, with or without a deal, is if we can keep the Conservative Party, our DUP allies, and perhaps a small number of Labour MPs on board. We're not going to deliver it any other way. Parliament can stop it. I think my experience in government means that I think it can. And I think this is going to be careful. And I've been brave enough to say, if you're going to be serious about leaving with a deal, I don't think it can be delivered. There's no credible way it can be delivered on the 31st of October. That doesn't mean kicking the can down the road. But I think
it does.
No, I think it means you
have to get an extension to Article 50.
It does, but not an indefinite one. It means you have to either have reached a deal with the European Union and you need an extension to get it through Parliament, or you've agreed a scope of discussion with the European Union and you've agreed a timetable.
But what makes you think you can get a better deal than the one that Theresa May has got? Because you presumably you've never met Michel Barnier, I imagine.
No.
You don't know the personalities. You'd almost have to start from scratch. Why do you think you could get a better deal?
Well, I think actually one of the things where I would have an advantage is because I haven't been involved in this process over the last 3 years, and I haven't made commitments that haven't been delivered, and I would genuinely be a fresh face. I think I could actually try and unblock some of this, but I don't underestimate the difficulty. But I think a new Prime Minister is going to have an opportunity to say to the European Union, they want us to leave with a deal. And they are surely going to have to confront the fact that the existing deal isn't going to go through Parliament. So they are faced with a situation where we're either going to leave without a deal, which I think they consider is quite damaging to a number of European member states, and I don't think they want that. But I think the big challenge for us is to have a relationship with the Taoiseach, the leader of the Irish government, and his leader of the opposition in Ireland, build some confidence that we're going to keep to the Belfast Agreement, and we're going to work with them to deal with their concerns. I think that's the only way we get the EU back round the table.
And just on this, at the hustings last night, the 4 candidates, including Boris Johnson, ruled out proroguing Parliament. Dominic Raab tonight just said he wouldn't rule out proroguing Parliament. What's your view? Would you rule it out?
I would rule it out for this reason. First of all, I don't think in politics it is defensible to say you're basically going to shut down Parliament. I just don't think that's defensible. The other reason, as a Conservative, I feel very strongly, is proroguing Parliament is something that Her Majesty Majesty the Queen has to do on the advice of the government. And I fundamentally think that as Conservatives we should keep the Queen out of party politics. And if you were going to prorogue Parliament, then I think you would drag the Palace and Her Majesty into
but
party
surely a new
politics.
Prime Minister would want his or her own Queen's speech to outline the legislative programme. This session of Parliament has lasted the longest since the Second World War.
Well, there's a difference. Proroguing Parliament for a short period to come back with a new Queen's speech is one thing. Proroguing Parliament so it isn't sitting and you can therefore get out of the European Union, I think is the wrong thing to do. And I have to say, if you pushed our constitutional proprieties to that level, you might well deliver leaving the European Union, but I'm afraid I think you would leave parts of the United Kingdom behind. I think you would test to destruction our relationship with Northern Ireland, and I think you would hand Nicola Sturgeon a weapon that she would use to push for a second Scottish referendum.
It is nearly time for you to put your questions to Mark Harper. He's here with me until 9 o'clock. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:33. Serena Farrow has the news headlines.
A cruise ship has started its journey from Portsmouth to Normandy, retracing the journey D-Day veterans made 75 years ago. Earlier, the Queen led commemorations honouring the soldiers, sailors and airmen involved in the invasion in 1944. Donald Trump's told the Irish Premier he believes Britain's exit from the EU will work out fine for the country. The US President's now in Ireland after completing his 3-day state visit here. And the Home Office has agreed to fund the search for missing Madeleine McCann until March next year. An application was made by the Metropolitan Police for another £300,000 in order to keep the investigation going in Portugal. LBC weather, showers mostly dying out tonight. Some rain, though, in parts of northern Scotland and Northern Ireland. A low of 2 degrees.
This is LBC. Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
Did anyone call the police at this point?
Yeah, my little one's upstairs and called the police.
And the police still hadn't arrived?
Police hadn't arrived. He got prosecuted for it. The day after, when I looked at what had happened, there were screwdrivers on the path that he'd obviously been throwing out his pockets.
I'm glad you're okay and on your side, because you're not the man breaking into people's property. But why did you drag him into your house?
Sheila Fogarty.
With Blink, an Amazon company, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
So, what's everyone got for lunch then?
Just a sandwich? Yeah, I've got the same boring sandwiches yesterday.
Oh, what have you got? A refreshingly smooth Costa iced latte, a tasty mozzarella and sun-dried tomato pasta salad, and a bag of fancy hand-cooked crisps.
Why have the same thing every day? Pop into Costa Coffee for lunch and pick up your favourite hot or iced coffee with our delicious lunch deal, just £4.95. Costa's lunch deal available between 11 and 2. Visit costa.co.uk for full terms and participating stores.
I've got friends coming over, and look at the state of you.
Garden furniture fail? Get to B&Q. Our stylish, versatile denier range is perfect for entertaining. It's made from hardware in acacia wood and features folding chairs, dining tables, storage and more. You can do it when you B&Q it.
The Audi A4 Saloon Black Edition has dark matte titanium alloy wheels. It has a sleek black grille, a discreet black spoiler, blackened privacy glass and black leather Alcantara upholstery. So you see, when it comes to style, with the Audi A4 Saloon Black Edition, there are no grey areas. Available from £299 per month with an initial rental of £1,794. Offer ends 30th of June 2019. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. Business users only. Excludes VAT at 20%. 48-month contract hire. T's and C's apply. No ownership. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
How refreshing is it to know that when you're thinking about remortgaging, you can find out if you could borrow what you need straight away without affecting your credit score? That's why at Barclays, we'll let you know with an online agreement in principle from the comfort of your own home. We're refreshing and reshaping the way we do mortgages to make them easier. Search Barclays Mortgages. Let's go forward. T's and C's apply.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere. Your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy. with Zoom.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:37, Mark Harper is here taking your calls. He's Conservative MP for Forest of Dean, former Chief Whip, and wants to be our new Prime Minister. If you would like to watch us on Twitter, Facebook or the website, you can do so at lbc.co.uk. Mark, you need to put your headphones on so you can listen to the calls. Let's go to Stephen, who's in Birmingham. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, thank you for taking the call.
Not at all. What would you like to ask?
Yeah, sure. I would like to know if... hi, Mark. I'd like to know...
Hi, Stephen.
If you'd ever look at... Oh, yeah. I'd like to know if you'd ever look at reforming the DWP fitness to work tests, because there are a lot of people with degenerative illnesses and lifelong illnesses and even cancer who are tested time and time again, which causes a lot of stress for them. So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that's a very good point. I served as a minister in the DWP. I think I'm right in saying that since over the last few years, I think we have changed some of the fit for work tests for people with lifelong conditions. And I think I'm right in saying when Damien Green was the Work and Pension Secretary, we did actually say that for people with certain conditions, actually they wouldn't need to be retested.
But there
so
was
I
a
think
case,
some of that's happened
case
already.
last week, which I'm trying to remember the details of now. I think a woman with terminal cancer had to be tested again, and it seems just inhumane that this sort of thing can happen.
Well, there's two issues. There's the policy one, which Stephen has talked about, and also whatever the policies are, you do sometimes just get administrative screw-ups, which in cases like the one you said are appalling, and so you have to do both bits. You have to fix the policy, but you've also got to look at how well you deliver this stuff. I had to do that when I took over in the job. There were some real issues about how we were assessing people for personal independence payment, and decisions were taking too long, particularly for people with terminal illnesses, and over a period of months we got it fixed. So I think Stephen's point's right. I think we've made some progress on that, but I certainly want to make sure we deliver the help we need to people. We spend huge amounts of money on disability benefits, and I want to make sure that money is going to the people that need it most.
OK, Stephen, thank you. Elaine is in Cambridgeshire. Hi, Elaine.
Oh, hello there. First of all, good evening to both of you.
Hi, Elaine.
And
Hello.
Mr. Harper, I don't wish to be disrespectful,
but
because I think there's been too much disrespect already.
Okay.
But first of all, I can't see how you can believe in Brexit when you voted to remain.
Okay.
Secondly, do you honestly know how angry people are in this country at the way, we've been... Well, your government has tried to sort of lead us through the nose for the past 3 years, and I actually believe that we've been... I think we're a laughing stock.
So what's your question, Elaine?
My question... Well... I want to know, my question is, do you realise how angry people are? Because from what I've heard, what you said tonight, I haven't heard anything new at all. Okay. And I have to say that I would be very happy for Parliament to be prorogued if it meant that we could leave with no deal on WTO rules. And that's how I feel, and I think many of us do.
Okay.
Well, first of all, your two questions, Elaine, very clear. Yes, I do know how angry people are, because I went out and knocked on doors. We had local elections this year in my patch, and I went and knocked on lots of doors, and I'm afraid I talked to a lot of people who normally vote Conservative, and they made it very clear how angry they were. So, I voted in Parliament to deliver Brexit. I voted to leave on the 29th of March and on the 12th of April without a deal, because I felt we should keep the promise we made to the British people 3 years ago when we had a referendum. As I said, you made your decision and the public made their decision, and it's our job to deliver it.
But how come if you voted to leave with no deal then, and yet you say you think that Article 50 would have to be extended again on the 31st of October to avoid leaving with no deal?
Because I can count. And the reason why we didn't leave on the 29th of March and the 12th of April, and why Elaine's so angry, is because there weren't enough people voting the way I did. And I am absolutely committed to getting us out, but my judgment is the only way we're going to deliver Brexit and do what we promised, Elaine, is if we can deliver the numbers in Parliament. I am absolutely convinced that Parliament, if we don't do this right, will stop us leaving. And I think to persuade all of my colleagues in the Conservative Party to not do that, to not block Brexit, they've got to feel that the Prime Minister has busted a gut to deliver a deal.
But that's what this Prime Minister has done.
Well, no, I don't think she has demonstrated that. We had an example earlier this year when we had the so-called Brady Amendment, where Parliament did show that it would vote for something. It would vote for the deal without the backstop. There was an opportunity, I feel, for the Prime Minister at that point to go back to the European Union, make it very clear that something needed to change in the deal to reflect what Parliament has said. I don't think there's any evidence that I can see that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet really pushed that point with the European Union. So she came back with a deal that was basically exactly the same, which is why we haven't left and why Elaine's angry and why a huge number of people that usually vote Conservative are very angry with the politicians for not keeping our promises.
Would you commit to replacing Ollie Robbins as the Chief Advisor on Brexit on day one in Downing Street?
First of all, I don't think Ollie Robbins is the problem.
Well, a lot of people think he absolutely
they might
is
do,
the problem.
but I'm afraid I'm slightly old-fashioned on this. Ministers make decisions, civil servants give advice, and I'm afraid if you blame officials, it's just a rather cowardly way for blaming the Prime Minister.
So you wouldn't get rid of him?
Well, no, I would want to have a new team, but I'm just saying I don't think you can blame the civil servants.
Well, I wasn't saying that. In fact, I do blame him.
I'd want to put a new.
Who would be your Brexit secretary?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't made those decisions. I think, frankly, at this stage of the contest, I think it's rather presumptuous to be sitting down and putting a cabinet together.
Would Boris Johnson be in your cabinet?
I would want all of the best players on the pitch. Boris Johnson is very talented. I'd want all of the best players in the Conservative Party in the government.
Elaine, has Mark made you a little less angry?
One more observation, and that is,
sure.
Listen, look, it seems to me that MPs, they persuade people to vote for them, and then when they get into Parliament, they do as they like. Now, look, Parliament is not sovereign; the people are. And if the Conservatives don't realise that, they will be gone. I voted Conservative. I will never do it again.
Elaine,
I don't want to say any more.
One of the reasons, Elaine, why when Iain was asking me about the date and October the 31st, one of the reasons why I would love us to leave on October the 31st, but if I genuinely, as I do, don't think it is deliverable, I think it is very dangerous to make another promise that you can't keep. And I'm afraid it'd be very easy for me to promise to leave on the 31st of October, but I don't think we can deliver it. I don't think I should promise it.
Why not say then, OK, look, I'm a new Prime Minister. I can't deliver this by October the 31st. Nobody else can either, but they won't admit it to you, but I will. So I'm going to suggest that we extend Article 50 for another 12 months, and that will give us time to renegotiate this deal. And then if we don't get it on October the 31st, 2020, we leave, come what may, or we have an election.
Well, the reason why I don't think we should do that for a year is because I'm very conscious that there's another set of elections next year. We've got Police and Crime Commissioner elections across the whole of England and Wales. We've got some big mayoralties that are up for election. My own view, particularly having listened to people like Elaine, is I don't think the Conservative Party can have another set of national elections when we haven't delivered Brexit. If we do that, we will have the same... Yeah, absolutely. We will have the same appalling result we had. And I don't need to have another set to know that people are very angry.
We've got lots of calls coming in. 0345 6060 973. Elaine, thank you for your call. It's 8:46.
Eddie Mair, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m. on LBC.
Do you think Nigel Farage would be a good Conservative leader?
I think we have plenty of talent in the Conservative Party.
Do you think he'd be a good Conservative leader?
When you look at the job that's got to be done, that's irrelevant.
Well, what about winning elections? That's quite useful, isn't it? And this new leader, this fresh lick of paint, will be chosen by a very narrow electorate. You're likely to get a more extreme version of Brexit than the country might want.
Eddie Mair, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m. LBC.
Being born in the USA and marrying a Galway girl may not necessarily make you walk 500 miles to a Norwegian wood like an Egyptian to bless the rains down in Africa. But if we are as open-minded, open to the world, open to new ideas as we are to music, we can all dance as part of something far, far bigger. Because we are not an island. HSBC UK. Together we thrive. And this is the end of the ad as we know it.
The world's biggest tent has an entire mini golf course inside. Think that's big? This Friday's Euro Millions is a humongous £105 million super jackpot. 105 million! Now that's big!
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Get Vodafone's double data deal this summer. We're giving away double data on all pay monthly smartphones. Yes, all pay monthly smartphones. Now a huge 30 gig for the price of 15, starting at only £30 a month. Double the selfie sharing, double the playlist pumping, and double the maps mapping. To get double data, go online or in-store today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Terms and details at vodafone.co.uk/summer. Ends 9th of July.
Out of bed and... Slippers on, breakfast cooked, lunch packed.
Darling, where am I?
Keys are on the side. Get dressed, shirt on, the right way, leave the house, pop to Costa, order a coffee and... relax with a deliciously smooth cappuccino.
Escape the morning rush with your favourite coffee. Visit your local Costa Coffee today.
To all who've travelled with Eurotunnel the shuttle, the outdoorsy types, foodie types, E-types, Jaguars, dogs, cats, alpacas, boot packers, last-minute packers, kitchen sink packers, motorhomes, motorbikers, mountain bikers, surfboarders, snowboarders, crossing borders with feet up on the dashboarders, long legs, first timers, and the let's just take it all in our own timers. It's our 25th birthday, but we're wishing you many happy returns. Join the celebration at Eurotunnel.com.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 10 to 9. You're listening to our first Battle for Prime Minister interview with Mark Harper. He is former Government Chief Whip, Conservative MP for the Forest of Dean. You can watch us on our website, lbc.co.uk, on our Twitter feed or Facebook page. Before we go to the next call, let's take a text from Jean in Walsingham, who says, you were the minister responsible for the Go Home vans. Do you feel ashamed of yourself?
No, I don't, Jean. The Go Home vans we were doing some pilots of different ways of encouraging people who are in the country illegally, that's the important point, illegally, to leave the country in the most cost-effective way for the taxpayer. We tried a number of things. We said we'd be driven by the evidence. They didn't work, so we didn't do them again. But the message that if you're in the country illegally, that you shouldn't be here, I think is a perfectly sound one and supported by the vast majority of the British people.
Were they your idea?
I was the minister responsible for delivering them, yes, and they were approved by me and the Home Secretary.
Were they your initiative?
No, they were officials. They were advice that I received. But I take responsibility. I was the minister. I made the decision. I signed them off, and they were signed off by the Home Secretary. But you thought
they were a good idea, because I think most people that saw them, regardless of, I mean, obviously they were to encourage people who were here illegally to go home. But the message that they sent out more generally was a fairly harsh one.
Well, I wanted to test them. We tested them in a limited range of areas. We tested a number of other messages as well to people who are illegally, and we looked at the evidence, and they didn't work, so we didn't do them again. But I think the fundamental message, which is, if you're in the United Kingdom illegally, you're breaking our rules. I don't think you should still be here, and I think it's also not fair on all of those people who come to Britain legally, follow the rules, and expect people who don't follow the rules to be treated.
And do you stand by the commitment by Theresa May to get immigration down to the tens of thousands?
My own view, I think we need to control immigration. I would like to move to a system, once we're outside the European Union, where the test is about skills, about the contribution you make to the country, and I'd like to see if we could do that and make sure that you're always making a contribution to the public finances. The problem with having the current target is we haven't hit it, and I think it's a rather blunt tool. I think the public want to know that if you come to Britain, you're paying your way, you're contributing more to the country than you consume in public services. And I think if you do that and you can make public services more responsible, the country's relaxed about it. But I don't want to just scrap it without replacing it with an alternative control
But again,
mechanism.
that's a mealy-mouthed answer. I mean, it's a simple yes or no. You either agree with the target or you don't.
Well, I agree that we need to show people that we care about controlling immigration. Is that the best way to do it? No, it isn't. But I think you have to replace it with something, not just scrap it. I would want to replace it with a system where you were very clear that people who are coming here to work were making a contribution in excess of the public services they consume, so they make everybody better off. I think if you can do that and you can make public services more responsive, so a large number of people coming here doesn't mean that people who are here already find it difficult to access public services, I think people will be more relaxed about it.
If you become Prime Minister, is immigration going to be lower under you than it has been under Theresa May?
I would like it to be lower for this reason, because I think we need to put some pressure on the labour market, because there are hundreds of thousands of people in Britain today who are more difficult to get into the labour market. For example, there are hundreds of thousands of people who have mental health problems and learning disabilities who are capable of being in the workforce, who want to work, but I think we need to make it easier for employers to want to look at them rather than going for the easy thing, which is importing.
All right, let's go to another call. Brendan is in Telford. Brendan, what's your question, please?
Good evening. Mark has said this evening that he'd keep no deal on the table and that he'd have to persuade other parliamentarians to accept that. But for it to make any difference at all to the process, I think he'd have to convince Brussels to believe that he would actually do it. And as someone who, just like Theresa May, is prepared to push the Brexit date back and also originally voted Remain, doesn't he think it needs a charismatic person who actually wants Brexit and voted that way to push the Conservatives forward? Someone who, instead of delivering Brexit, wants to actually leave the EU.
Well, I think what I'd say, Brendan, is if you look at how I voted in Parliament, which is not the same as Theresa May, I voted to leave the European Union on the 29th of March and the 12th of April without a deal. She didn't. And I voted against extending Article 50. She didn't. So I am committed to doing this, but the problem is, the reason why we haven't left is because there weren't enough people voting the way I voted. And if I'm going to be credible with the European Union to say, if they don't give us a better deal, we're going to leave without one, I have to persuade enough people in Parliament that I have busted a gut to get a deal for them to be prepared to leave without one, because otherwise I'm afraid Parliament will stop us leaving again. And you can believe in it all you like, but that doesn't change the numbers and it doesn't persuade my colleagues. That's the problem.
Brendan?
Well, I have to be honest, it just sounds like more of the same to me. I think the problem here is it just sounds like Mark is another MP who thinks no deal has to be avoided, and as someone who said, I'll push the can or kick the can down the road again to make sure it's done properly. By the time it gets to that point, I think people who are asking for another referendum will have a fair point by then. I wanted to leave the EU, deal or no deal. It was a very simple question. And all this business about, well, we'll extend and we'll talk and we'll do some more, I think, unfortunately, it's going to take someone who is considered unpredictable enough to
can't think who you mean, Brendan. He's got a fair point, hasn't he?
No, I can see why people think that. The problem is, the bit you can't get around is that because of the arithmetic in Parliament, the only way of changing the arithmetic is to persuade pretty much every Conservative member of Parliament and our DUP allies to vote, either not vote against leaving because Parliament has the power to stop us, or to vote for a deal. And you can believe in something all you like, but you've actually got to do the work with your colleagues. You've got to do the work with the European Union to bring back a deal that you can get through Parliament so that we can leave, or you've persuaded people, you've done everything possible so that you can make sure Parliament allows you to leave without a deal. Now, I've been clear, look, I voted to leave without a deal, so I don't think it has to be avoided at all costs. The reason why my preference is for a deal is because I think if we're not careful, we won't take the whole of the United Kingdom out of the European Union. I don't want to damage the relationship with Northern Ireland, and I don't want to give Nicola Sturgeon a stick to
couple of minutes
break away
left.
Scotland.
Brendan, thank you. John is in Canning Town. What's your question, John, please?
Yeah, good evening, all of you. Yeah, my question is that is he very sure that European Union is going to extend the date Britain is to leave the EU again? Because the last one was a tug of war. And how can he be sure that the EU is going to give us extension again if he goes back to them?
Well, two things. First of all, I think whoever becomes Prime Minister, and this is what I would do, is make sure from day one we are properly preparing for no deal in a very visible way so that we can leave if we have to on the 31st of October. Secondly, I think the evidence is that the European Union has stuck together. I think they consider that Ireland would be damaged by us leaving without a deal, and so would some of the other member states. And I don't
Macron
think
was not in favour of
he wasn't.
extension.
No, he wasn't. But as we saw, ultimately, the European Union stuck together, and he didn't get his way. He was persuaded, and I think that's what would happen again in October. But I do think we have to be ready to make sure we could leave if we weren't given that extension, and make sure we're in good shape to do that.
You have 6 backers according to the different websites that count these things. You have to get 8 to actually put your nomination papers in. Will you have those 8?
Yes, I have. I know who they are. I've got my nomination papers, and I'll be on the ballot paper next week.
Isn't it an act of self-indulgence, though? Because you aren't going to win, are you?
Well, I don't know. It depends how many of my colleagues I can persuade to vote for me. And whether I get into the final 2 and then persuade our members. I wouldn't be doing this. There are easier ways to spend one's time. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think, first of all, I had something to offer to my colleagues and to my country. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think I could persuade my colleagues that I had what it took to do the job. Whether I get there or not will depend on what they do in the ballot box, and we'll see next week.
30 seconds, make a pitch to our listeners. There may be lots of Conservative Party members who are listening to this right now. 30 seconds. Why should you be Britain's next Prime Minister?
Because I think I've got a plan to deliver Brexit, which I think is essential. I think my approach to governing the country is to make sure it's a freer country and a country with more opportunity for people from backgrounds like mine, from ordinary working class backgrounds. And because I think we've got to appeal, as Margaret Thatcher did, to traditional Conservative voters, but we've got to appeal wider than that to people that haven't previously voted for us so that we can beat Jeremy Corbyn. I think he would be a massive risk to the country, both for our economic and our national security. But I think we've got to deliver Brexit, govern successfully for 3 years, to show people what we offer. They're not just going to take us at our word.
Well, Mark, it's going to be an interesting few weeks. If you get to the final 2, I hope you'll come back and debate with whoever else is in the final 2. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank
Indeed.
you.
Now, our interviews continue on Monday next week with Rory Stewart and Sam Gmar, and all of the other candidates are lined up with one possible exception, but I am hopeful that even that exception is going to come and be interviewed on LBC. If you missed any of tonight's interview, you can catch it up on the Cross Question podcast. It'll be up there later on, and also on the LBC YouTube channel. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about the Alabama law, which means that paedophiles in Alabama could in future be chemically castrated. Does that fill you with absolute horror? Do you think it's inhumane? Or do you think it's something that maybe Mark Harper should think about when he becomes Prime Minister? He's looking at me in a very strange way now. This is LBC, it's 9 o'clock.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is